Kosidin said, it is very hard considering our limited lifespan. Ross said that before 75,000 years ago, the lifespan was 900 years and kept decreasing, and now we are in a perpetual spiritual childhood. Yes, that's a great point. Actually, I just listened to a passage the other day when they asked Ra, what is the appropriate incarnational lifespan for third density? And Ra said about 1,000 years. And it's interesting, right? When you look at the Bible, there's passages in the book of like Numbers and Deuteronomy, I think, where they talk about beings like Melchizedek in ancient times that lived like 900 something years. And what's interesting in the Law of One is that they actually ask Ra, I think they asked Ra, what's the longest a third density being has lived, or what was the average lifespan? That's what they asked, like 50,000 years ago or something like that. And he said between 700 and 900 years. And they said, what happened on planet Earth that caused the lifespan to drop so dramatically? And Ra says that basically it was, so this kind of goes back to the opposable thumb, ironically. Ra says that their planet on Venus was very harmonious in their evolution. And part of the reason is because their species didn't have opposable thumbs, apparently. And our Logos, the sun, decided to run a new experiment, because every planet is an experiment in some way. Every star and every Logos is experimenting in different ways. And all the experiments' data and evidence is known by all other Logos. So every star has access to what all the other experiments are doing and how the results played out. And they sort of exchange that data to come up with new experiments to run, which Ra says literally are not known until they are run. Like the creator doesn't know what's going to happen if it puts a veil of forgetting over third density until it does it. So in sessions like 82 through 85, I think, basically every session is about what was it like before the veil in third density. And it's really, really fascinating stuff. I would highly recommend you go read. Ra explains why the veil was such a powerful catalyst for evolution, because I think he says, consider the nature of those who are divinely happy. No fear is seen as great. No love too terribly important, because all love is all that they know. So basically, he said it in third density before the veil, the lifespan was around 1,000 years, and they could control their physical bodies in terms of pain. Like they said, if something happens to the body that causes pain, it was basically just like an alarm system that alerted the being to a problem in the body, and then they would heal it with their mind and shut the pain off. So they could literally shut pain off with their minds. He says that there was no monogamy, because everyone's seen equally as the creator. So love is just shared in whatever way they desire. And what was the third big one? Basically, the Logos wanted to see what would happen if two souls devote themselves to one another. So he likens it to school, like children in school. He says if there's no punishment for not doing homework or passing a test, then the children just play, they goof around, they don't do their homework, they don't study, they don't grow, because there's no punishment for not doing so. So that's why one of the Logos, who knows how long ago, came up with this idea of what if we veil third density so they have no memory of who they are, where they're at in their evolution, or anything. What would happen? And that was conceived of because third density was basically like a perpetual state of incarnation, where beings, it was really difficult to polarize enough to graduate to fourth density, because there was no motivation to spiritually accelerate, to spiritually evolve. So once the veil was introduced, Ross says the third density was amplified like 100-fold, and suddenly became this really short, really intense period of polarizing, because there was that veil, and it's the only density where there is a veil. So he said this provided the creator with a better experience of itself to choose between the positive and the negative polarity. Because Ra says that before the veil of forgetting, there was no service to self path, because all was seen as the creator. So the Logos didn't know what was going to happen when it introduced the veil. And now to answer your question, Robert, polarize means essentially grow spiritually or evolve spiritually, gain more polarity. It wasn't known what was going to happen until they did it, but all of a sudden this new expression was born called the service to self path, or the negative polarity. Or you could boil it down to the belief in separation, which is what the Course in Miracles talks about. So this was set up to give the creator a new way of knowing itself. And so what Ra says is that the reason our lifespan began to diminish so rapidly is because at some point in our human evolution, we began forming tribes. And because of our opposable thumbs, we created weapons. And in an earlier session, I think in the 30s, I believe, Ra explains that the opposable thumb caused on not only our planet, but on the planet Mars, like a couple 100 million years ago, I think, also caused war to be evolved. Whereas on Venus, war never was conceived of, because all was seen as harmonious and unified, because there was no invention of handheld weapons at the primal stages of their evolution. So they worked together. They were more harmonious. But when we can come up with weapons, all of a sudden I can control you. I can make you do what I want. And this allows for the service to self-polarity to express itself more. So what Ra says is that at the time where our tribes began becoming more separate and warring with one another, doing battle with one another, conquering one another, enslaving one another, the planetary frequency dropped so much from those really, what Ra would say, bellicose actions caused, so that the lifespan shortened because there's less harmony and more entropy. And so we actually see that in our own world as well. Ra says the reason they visited Egypt, and I said this in my last video, I Am Ra, was because the average lifespan was 30 years, 30 years old. And so Ra says there was basically no ability to gain spiritual polarity because, you know, by the time you're 30, you're just about ready to start really practicing spirituality, and then your life is over. So beings were just reincarnating perpetually in third density and not really getting anywhere, because it was supposed to be about 1,000-year lifespan, which I can't even imagine what it would be like to live that long. But it's interesting that we're watching the human lifespan, and you can look at this on graphs, especially over the last 1,000 years and beyond probably, is beginning to trend upwards, where people are living longer. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that our world is slowly becoming more harmonious. There's less war, there's less genocide, there's less enslavement than there has been in the past. And so the planetary frequency is beginning to reflect that. And as we move into fourth density, Ra says the average lifespan of a fourth density body, which we're very far away from evolving, but in 1 million years or so, the average lifespan is 90,000 years. So that gives you an idea of the difference of intensity of third density compared to all the others, which are very, very harmonious. And it's kind of funny, actually, in one passage, they ask Ra, what's the most intense catalyst available in fourth density, like in terms of suffering and all of that? And he says ceasing serving others long enough to eat food is a type of catalyst for fourth density beings, because there's so much love and desire to serve that to put that on hold is kind of hard for them. And then he says physical death is actually when the physical body begins to die in fourth density. That's a type of pain. And they say, what kind of pain is it? Is it like our pain? And Ra says, you would describe it as weariness. So I guess you can take that as a positive for what we have to look forward to. Really, this third density is the only one where there's suffering and physical pain and things of that nature. And all of that serves to force us into a really quick choosing between polarities so we can get on with our evolution. So thanks for that question.